Hello and welcome to Real Talk.
Within these next 3 episodes, we will be discussing how the media industry has been affected by the pandemic. For this episode, we will be talking about how the pandemic has affected current blockbuster films. Please note that this podcast contains strong language. 3, 2, 1, action. Hello and welcome back to Real Talk. My name is Daniel Robertson. This is episode 2. I am here with my co-host. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Ben Seitz. You guys must have heard me in the previous podcast. Luckily, you don't have to listen to my voice much, as Dan is hosting. But yes, welcome back to Real Talk, where we are going to be talking about the current crisis going on at the moment.
Yes.
Current pandemic. So, how have you felt really about the pandemic? Have you watched a lot during lockdown?
I think, obviously, everyone has watched a lot more and done a lot more with social media and everything involved with media during the pandemic because they've got so much free time on their hands.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I mean, it's like, if you look at Netflix at the moment, the numbers that they're doing, just numbers that they're doing in lockdown, it's like Tiger King, for example, that got over 100 million households watching it in the first month. I mean, that's insane that any service to be doing those numbers, and obviously Disney Plus here in the UK managed to launch at just the perfect time because they launched back in March, and obviously The Mandalorian has been massive at the moment. And actually, I've been enjoying The Mandalorian just because, and actually I've looked at this a lot when I've been researching stuff for this podcast. I've been looking at, I've liked the weekly approach that most streaming services are doing now, because obviously Netflix like to do the dump it all at once method where you just watch all of it in one day. But I prefer the fact that you get a new episode every week, because then you can look back and properly reflect on the programme in question,
definitely.
And look back at the episode. And it's like there are many films that I've been watching on Netflix. It's like Mank, I watched that over the weekend, and yeah, it was decent. I probably think it's similar to Tenet in a way where I think the technical aspects, kind of overshadow the actual script and films itself. But really, at the end of the day, that film was just a David Fincher film, which just so happens to have Gary Oldman in a really good performance. And the fact that I was able to watch that on Netflix at the company of my own home, I mean, it's revolutionary. I mean, the fact that we're just able to watch anything at any time, I mean, it's just crazy, and it just couldn't have come at a better time for all these streaming services. Don't you agree, Dan?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite a good idea to be able to reflect on these programs on streaming services such as Netflix, and I know that lots of people rush through these shows and films and don't really let it sink in, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I prefer a break. I absolutely prefer a break when it comes to shows. It's like that's why I'm watching The Crown every two or so days.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I like to have a bit of a break to think about what the creators wanted me to interpret from it. You know. But anyway, so when we first recorded this last week, we talked about HBO Max. So for anyone who doesn't know, Warner Brothers, at least in the US, are basically planning to dump their whole 2021 film slate on both HBO Max and also in cinemas at the same time. And let's just say that it's got a little bit of criticism, let's just say that.
I know that most people wouldn't really agree with that.
Yeah,
really.
Well, I've got up here on my phone, so literally just on Wednesday, Tuesday, from when we're recording this, Christopher Nolan, who everyone knows is the director of The Dark Knight, Inception, and pretty much, one of the biggest Hollywood directors currently, he did an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, basically saying that he is pissed at, the decisions that they're making here. If I just quickly read out what he said here. So, some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the night before thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio and woke up to find out they were working for the worst streaming service. Warner Brothers is an incredible machine for getting the filmmakers' work out everywhere, both in theatres and in the homes, and they're dismantling it as we speak. They don't even understand what they're losing. Their decision makes no economic sense, and even the most casual Wall Street investor can see the difference between disruption and dysfunction.
He's not happy, is he?
Yeah, it definitely shows that by it. And to be fair, when I did first look at it, I did think, oh, haha, Nolan's obviously angry that a film's not going to be shown in cinemas. Is do bear in mind that Nolan did release Tenet in the midst of a whole pandemic, and he pretty much forced Warner Brothers to release it in cinemas. So at first, I was a little bit, on the jokey side, thinking, oh, he's in the wrong here. He just doesn't understand that streaming is going to be a big deal nowadays. But now, actually looking into what's happened with Warner Brothers, honestly, I think he's in the right.
Yeah.
Because I want to support cinemas as much as possible. I think the whole HBO Max and cinemas thing that Warner Brothers are doing, I'm sort of in the middle of it, where I can understand why they're doing it, and I can support that they want to do it for the streaming service. I mean, it's mainly not going to affect us here in the UK to begin with as well. But at the same time, I understand that some filmmakers are going to be unhappy. It's like, from what I've heard, even the Directors Guild of America, who are a massive, massive union who represent, huge names in Hollywood, they're actually getting a letter and a campaign to Warner Brothers to boycott because simply they didn't say anything at all. Apparently, according to what I know, they did a $300 million bailout to Patty Jenkins, who was the director of Wonder Woman, the brand new Wonder Woman film coming out. And it's even on her Twitter. She knows that, it's going to be out on HBO Max and theatres on Christmas Day. And pretty much no one else knew about it. Apparently, people who have signed the letter, so Denis Villeneuve, who's directed Dune, he didn't know anything about it. Lily Wachowski, who's directing The Matrix Source, she knew nothing about it. Legendary Pictures, who are a massive, massive financer to Warner Brothers, they were going to do a Netflix deal, which would have easily got them their money back, but now, obviously, Warner Brothers has screwed them over, so pretty much they're screwed now. Christopher Nolan, of course, as you saw in that statement, he's pretty much annoyed by it, and pretty much it's just a gigantic shit show.
Yeah, it's a mess, really.
I mean, the fact that they're not even telling the filmmakers, because here's my thing about it is, they're a film studio. I mean, any corporate decision they do, that's fine. And I think, sure, it's not the greatest decision, but I think for times like this now, I think money-wise and business-wise, I think it is the best decision they can make. But the fact that they're not even telling their filmmakers what the hell's going on, I mean, that is bad business. I mean, come on. I mean, the fact that they had to wake up in the morning with hundreds of emails coming in just saying, what the hell is going on? I mean, and I know you're not really as interested in this as I am, but what do you think about it overall, Dan?
I perfectly understand people's disagreement with it, to be honest. I understand why some people don't find it very fair.
Yeah, it's just the fact that $1 billion company, a massive conglomerate like Warner Media, are just allowing for their filmmakers and just not communicating with them properly.
Yeah.
I mean, that is bad. When you've got Christopher Nolan, who is arguably one of the biggest filmmakers that the 21st century have ever seen, or pretty much just ever seen, shitting on you, I mean, that is terrible. I mean, that is so, so terrible.
It is.
And you gotta think what he thinks about now. Because sure, I thought that he was a dickhead for the way that he managed Tenet, but still, the fact that the studio is not even communicating with the filmmakers on their own films, I mean, my God. And Warner Brothers this year have handled many things poorly. It's like, obviously, this, Ray Fisher as well, I can think about. Obviously, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, which I don't want to get into now, because quite frankly, it's been talked about enough. But you can just tell that Warner Brothers have been massively shat on for the past year. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
When you just think about bad business practice, I mean, God, it's just...
It's terrible, really.
It's unbelievable. It's just absolutely unbelievable that people have to go through shitty business decisions like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about some films that were released in lockdown. So obviously, we watched a couple of films. So we watched a short film by Jonathan Glazer, which was very good. And another film that we saw the trailer for was one called Songbird. So if you'd like to explain that, Dan.
Well, Songbird is it's a film based on coronavirus, but set in the year 2024. And when we discussed it in our focus group the other day, we showed them a trailer. Not many of them have heard of it, and I'm sure not many people have really heard of it who are listening right now. But they said it was a bit over-exaggerated, because when you look back to this pandemic in the future, hopefully when the world is back to normal, people will look at it and say, it's they kind of over-exaggerated.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think personally overall, we were talking about this, but I think it's just way too soon that they should be making film about this.
Yeah, definitely.
So a great film that we talked about that was really an example of how to deal with a tragedy right was United 93. Now, United 93 is a film about the United Airlines flight number 3, which sadly went into the World Trade Center on 9/11.
Yeah.
And Paul Greengrass, who is the director of that, he released that film in 2006.
Yeah.
That was 5 years after 9/11.
He gave it a bit of time, really.
Yeah, exactly. He gave time to do his proper research. He spoke with the participants. He made sure that he got every detail right so that it was respectful to the event.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, when you speak about 5 years and 4 months, which was the amount of time that Songbird spent, there's a bit of a difference, isn't there, between that period of time.
Yeah.
And sure, I can understand. I understand that they want to be relevant, but the problem with that is that it can make it more dated in a couple of years' time. And I'm not saying that you can't make a film about the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, I believe that anyone has the power to make any story they tell, as long as they tell it right, But I just believe that, they should have just gave it the time. I just feel like the problem is that they just went into it thinking, oh, if we get this out too late, we won't be relevant and we won't be the eyes of attention anymore. I think that's the problem, really. Even though United 93, that was a massive success. Even though that came out 5 years after 9/11, it's a massive success. And quite frankly, to me, to be honest, the film looks terrible. I mean, it just doesn't look that good at all in terms of the filmmaking. But and sure, I can respect the actual production of it. I mean, the fact that they were able to make it in 4 months is impressive by any means. But, just the fact that, just spun it out in this time. I mean, it's just wrong. It's just absolutely wrong.
I guess that's what has made it stand out a bit, that it's been made in 3 months, really, or 4 months. Because when you look at films, they normally take a good few years sometimes, and to make a film in 3 months about a recent event or an event we're currently going through, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I just think, as I said earlier, it's just going to make the film look more dated. And sure, I've not seen the film yet, so I'm not going to put my overall, opinion on it. No. But personally, from what I've seen so far, I just think it's a case of filmmakers just trying to get clout for making a film in a pandemic. And, I just personally believe... If this was 2 years later, say if they made this in 2022, then I'll be absolutely fine with it. There's such difference, and there's such a better amount of care when you take the time to tell your story properly, rather than just getting it out to be relevant for a couple of weeks and to get the talk of many newspapers and just the media itself. So yeah, just personally for me, I don't think the film's going to be that great, and I just think personally it's just a way of attention seeking. It's attention seeking in a glamorized way, I think.
I mean, they're talking of, you know, films being made over, you know, this pandemic. There are films that are successful.
Oh yeah, it's like Tenet that made
definitely
over 300 million. And sure, I think about Christopher Nolan the same way that I think about Kubrick, really, where I'd kind of separate the art from the artist. Like, sure, Christopher Nolan, the way he handled that was a really dickish move. But I enjoyed the film. I thought the film was good. It's the same with Kubrick as well. It's like he was a massive dickhead most of the time. And he was pretty much... Most of the stuff he did was horrible. But, as you've gathered from this podcast, he is my favourite director. And he's made some of my favourite films ever made. I think he's one of the best directors ever lived. And, you know, I think there is a fact where you've got to separate the art from the artist, I think, in many things. And I think the same as that with Nolan. Sure, he handled with it in a terrible way, but I had a fun time watching it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really my opinion when it comes to filmmakers like him in our world today. And I still get excited when I see a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah, definitely.
And I care, I respect the fact that he cares about the audience. I respect the fact that he wants the audience to have a good time, but when you're in a pandemic, you've got to have a bit of leniency towards what you're doing, and just have a idea that you're not going to have the film that you were originally going to plan.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it's just not a good way to deal with it. And another new thing that's happened since we've last talked, it's honestly been a perfect week for this. Charlie Brooker, who is a really great guy, he's made Screen Wipe, he's also well known for making Black Mirror. He announced, I think, last Wednesday that he's making a Netflix special called Death to 2020.
Oh yeah, I heard of that.
So apparently what it is, it's obviously made by him, he created Black Mirror. It's going to be a mockumentary starring Hugh Grant as a historian. And it's basically just going to take a comedic look back at 2020. So what's your opinion on that? Do you think it's too early to make a comedic look at 2020, would you say?
Well, I know coronavirus isn't over, but hopefully we're getting to the end of it. But
well, it's like the vaccine, that happened the other day, you know.
Well, you know, I just hope we're getting to the end of it, but I still think it's a bit too early to make a film about coronavirus like we discussed with Songbird, and it's kind of the same thing really, where it could be seen as a bit disrespectful. And I know they've got some big names in it like Hugh Grant. We'll just have to see how it goes, really.
Yeah. Well, I think really with the whole situation, I think the thing is that Black Mirror is obviously known for being a sort of dystopian look at the future, really. And, you know, there are some great episodes of Black Mirror that truly exploit, you know, what our society sort of, you know, reacts to certain situations. It's like one of them called Shut Up and Dance is a great one. I won't give away the twist, but the way that's set up and the consequences of it are horrifying, and that's mainly set in a society just like our own. And I think if there is any person who can deal with 2020 in a comedic way, but at the same time give an informative look, I think it is Charlie Brooker, because the way that he handles certain events and situations is really, really great. It's like, he stopped doing it a couple of years ago when he started doing stuff for Netflix, but he often did like a yearly wipe. So there was a show he did called Weekly Wipe, and then every year he would do an end of year special. So we did like 2015 wipe, stuff like that, where he would look back at like the biggest like political events of the year and stuff like that, and everything that's been going on. And that was great because he took it in a very half-hearted, because that's the thing with Charlie Brooker, is he likes to exploit all politics, and that's what I quite like about him, is that he doesn't leave anyone, he doesn't glorify anyone at all. So I think that him doing a 2020 special will be something, very exciting because
hopefully
he's gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna put my final thoughts on it now, but I think he's gonna do a good job because there is so much to exploit out of 2020 that can be so perfect for it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I can't wait.
Yeah, same with me really.
Yeah.
But we'll just have to see how these productions get on, and hopefully they'll turn out okay. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, okay, right, thank you all so much for listening. Join us in our next episode where we will be talking about the future of productions.